Hi, this is Stream Troopers. I just wanted to say before this starts, I am a Farscaper and I believe they should bring it back. There is so much room in sci-fi now and a larger audience that there is no way they could ever mess up by not using Farscape again.
Scripted material.
Other early original programming, such as Welcome to Paradox and Mission Genesis, barely lasted a single season. But Sci-Fi was about to make their mark in the genre.
Farscape was to sci-fi what Star Trek was to broadcast television. It was a real shot across the bow. We are serious about doing great sci-fi television.
I've always contended that Farscape wouldn't have existed unless television had come up with exactly what we needed, which was a network totally devoted to speculative fiction.
Brian Henson had an agenda. He wanted to prove that the Henson Company could make really high-end makeups on fast turnaround.
A lot of the animatronic character and creature techniques that we've been doing in movies, we wanted to bring to television. So we were looking for what would be the coolest idea.
Rock wanted it to be highbrow and literary and something different, something special.
And something special is what Sci-Fi was looking for too.
All right, we don't understand the R2-D2 crap. We're going to use the Star Trek system. 1 blink for yes, 2 blinks for no.
And I, at that point, didn't know that Sci-Fi was even thinking of commissioning original programming like this, and particularly on this scale. It was impressive. The courage took Sci-Fi to jump in and commission the show.
We had 13 episodes ordered in the first block. That was the only way to make it viable, given all the sets and the creatures we had to build, was to have 13 episodes.
They just totally said, go for it. We want the show that pushes the envelope.
That's big.
Sci-Fi was really very bold in saying, we love this premise. We're looking for something that we could present as uniquely our own.
What are you all looking at?
A vision that shows the greater audience that this is not a regular network.
I'm in Bill and Ted land here, so I'm open to suggestion.
I think everyone thought it was far too ambitious and that it was going to be impossible.
Producing the show in Australia was one way to stretch the budget.
The Australian financing structure helped us to put a lot more money on screen.
It was the most ambitious project I think Australia had ever seen in television to that point. I don't know if the show could have been made anywhere else for the budget and have as much of the production values end up on screen as they did.
We were off on our own. Nobody knew where we were. The time zones were wrong.
Once we got there and discovered this incredible pool of artisans behind the scenes were just champing at the bit for a chance to ply their trade.
It would never have been Farscape. It would never have achieved what it achieved without those people. It wasn't us. It was actually them. We made it a democracy, and voting would decide what went in the show. I don't know how that will ever be recreated somewhere. The finances of television and film don't allow for that kind of anarchy.
It was a collective process. Directors had ideas, writers had ideas, sometimes actors have ideas, but literally right down to the grips, the sound guys, the caterer. If they had a really good idea, we used it.
Ben did sort of an amazing thing on set all the time, all the way through Farscape. If a set looked ridiculous, he would try to put it in the dialogue.
Hey, you know how to drive this Wonka Vader?
He always found clever ways to embellish, add, change, alter, heighten.
Everything I have seen so far is despicable.
Welcome to the Federation Starship SS Buttcrack.
Crichton is proxy for the audience in the vast, unknown, distant universe. He's the one that knows the references that they know.
I don't want to stoop that low. Kirk wouldn't stoop that low.
It was a television show, John.
He is actually a science fiction geek. He is that generation that watched Star Trek and then went, I want to be an astronaut.
But one of the most exciting parts of the show were the amazing creatures created by the Jim Henson Company.
These are million-dollar creations.
We had a couple of Rigels. We had the actual mechanical Rigel that was full service, all working, and then we had a doll version that we could kind of throw over cliffs, and I think we did that quite regularly.
You don't have 5 of them, you have 1 of them, and so we had some limitations, like Rigel didn't get to go swimming.
He was like our little diva on set. We had to be really careful with Rigel.
I'm nobody's puppet.
The actors were very aware of all the operation of it and all that, and were very hands-off and kept their distance. And it was Ben Browder who one day actually put his hands onto Rigel.
Rigel!
It just totally worked, and it just imbued Rigel because he could react to that.
He needs help. Lots of help. I don't think the mind cleansing is working.
Smack the puppet and people laugh. The puppet smacks you, it's even funnier.
It was a very bold thing for him to do as an actor, and just a stroke of genius because it kind of changed the game for everybody.
You wanted crackers?
When kids would come to set, children of the people working on the show, they would never look at the 6 puppeteers on the ground. They would look dead in the eyes of the puppet. And it was so touching, really sort of melted my heart to see how important imagination is to a kid and how they live in that world where they want to believe that the creature is real. It wasn't hard for the actors, though, either, to believe that these creatures were real because they were so beautifully designed.
Now it's impossible to watch the show and not just think of them as characters. You really do think of them as other members of the crew.
Whatever you've heard, forget it.
Critically, the show was a smash hit. The reviews were really, really positive. It's a little bit more brutal than the other science fiction, as well as it's a little more sexy and it's a little more emotional and the characters are a little less stable.
Hiya, honey!
Despite critical acclaim, Farscape couldn't last.
Sci-Fi, I don't think, wanted to cancel us. At least that's what we were told.
We were wrapping the day of season 4, thinking we automatically had a season 5, when I got the word from Brian that there would be no season 5.
Finally, we see John Crichton propose on a boat to Erin Sun, only to have them both be killed. And that was potentially going to be the end of Farscape forever.
We can't change what we're doing, so we'll just leave it with a cliffhanger and we'll leave the to be continued.
Sci-Fi had the option. They could have cut those last 2 minutes off and let the episode finish with Crichton and Erin are going to get married and live happily ever after.
I love you.
They understood how we felt, and they also understood that was always, the unpredictability of Farscape was always the appeal.
We were sad for the fans. We were sad for everyone who worked on the show because we were a family, the cast and crew, by that point.
There were grips, big, burly, hairy guys crying over the cancellation of the show because the crew was invested in this show. All the people that worked in the creature shop, the makeup artists, the lighting guys, straight down to the set nurse, were emotionally invested in making this piece of art.
There was a massive response from the fans, and I think really this show was on that first wave of the internet becoming a very powerful tool for audiences.
I was shocked. I could not believe it. I cried.
They sent protest to media outlets so that I ended up being on CNN discussing the fan outrage. They were very creative in their protest.
The fans just joined us in kind of a big shriek of, not now, this is not the time for this to end.
The passionate nature of the fans was a positive that showed everybody, wow, these people care. It isn't just a TV show that they're clicking on. These people have invested something in this show.
I am Farscape.
I am Farscape.
I am Farscape.
I am Farscape. I am Farscape.
The fan response led to a 4-hour miniseries to wrap up the story.
Brian Henson said, were it not for the power of these fans, we would not have been able to make Peacekeeper Wars.
It was someone from outside of the normal Hollywood circles that brought this investor money to Brian and said, we want to see the end of the story.
They did finance a very lavish miniseries to finish the series properly and to tell the final story the way we really wanted to.
Peacekeeper Wars certainly allowed us to get this group and troop to a good place where we could complete kind of the first cycle of Farscape. There's been a comic book series that we've done that's been very successful. There's always talk of rekindling the show in some incarnation, whether it's online or in features.
I don't believe Farscape is done. I still don't.
But I think there's a bigger audience out there for Farscape than we really know even to this day.
You'll see that every day.
Raindrop, drop top, smoking, no cooking the hot pot. You fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.